Well, welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy and how to energize your world, including your communities and business and all kinds of people, and why we need oil and gas. Excited to sit down with Davin Pekkala, who is our asset, what do we call you? Asset director? Asset manager?
I use the director when I'm getting some hardball from a dealership,
Oh, okay.
but
So,
it's a manager. I'm a manager. That's
so as needed, you're the asset director.
director, yeah.
Yeah.
Very more formal and yeah.
It sounds a little nicer.
I get better results when I use that one.
Yeah, isn't that sad that that's the way it is sometimes? But excited to sit down with you today and just talk about how assets impact our business. And I believe, especially now, even more so than ever, given the supply constraints and the challenges we've had. So thanks for sitting down with us, Dave. And
Yeah.
I would like to ask, how in the heck did you become an asset director? And what does that even mean?
Yeah, so that's probably one of my favorite questions to get is how did I get here? So I guess my background is automotive mechanics. I was a mechanic for about 5 years, and I had just a really strong hunger for a challenge. I really wanted to be challenged. I wanted to find a leadership type role, and I wanted to somehow mix that with my interest in vehicles and equipment. And so, yeah, I actually texted you at one point and said, "Hey, how do you have this Wescom? I hear this Wescom and this oil and gas and energy, and I have no idea what Shane actually does, but I know he's got vehicles and equipment in North Dakota, New Mexico, all over the Midwest. How in the world do you do this?" So I sent you a text, something along the lines of like, "Hey, I'm just curious, how do you do this? Because I'd done some work on your vehicles and you'd done my taxes and stuff like that anyway." And 2 weeks later, as I'm working on a side job, I'm trying to do this like side work to dabble a little bit in management. I'm getting super fired up on like invoicing people, out of a binder because I don't have any resources. But anyway, so you respond while I'm actually working on somebody's vehicle, and you just said it's kind of a disaster, but I'm along the lines of like you're making it work, um, and that we should chat. And so we kind of set up a time to meet, and yeah, we talked about it, and I was super intrigued, and you offered me a job, and I left a really awesome job and found an even greater opportunity to actually reach that kind of a goal I guess I had was I really enjoy working on equipment and vehicles. How can I make so I actually do the working on them in my personal time and manage them as like a career? That was kind of I think what I was shooting for, and I kind of I've gotten there. I have a project vehicle, and here I am managing a huge fleet at Wescom.
So I don't recall this text message, but you've worked with me long enough that you know I don't recall much. When you were going through that journey, there must have been something about entrepreneurship that you really liked. What part of that, or leadership? What is it that you really is?
I, I'm not sure how to really put a pinpoint on it. The having someone come to you with a problem that might seem daunting to them, and being able to provide a solution, um, is just something that just really intrigued me. That the people in my life that I've brought my problems to, the way they've been able to resolve them through their experience and their leadership, truly their leadership, that was like something that I aspired to accomplish, I guess.
So when you text me, if I remember right, this was maybe, how long have you worked for us?
Just over 3.5 years.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say I thought I saw 3.8 or something because we were just going through some work. So this was at a time when things were pretty chaotic for me, and I'm not a mechanic, and I'm a tight wad, and I have a really hard time paying for something I don't understand. And so we had some older vehicles, and I remember being pretty frustrated about the just dealing with how do I get this asset fixed, right? And how do I know what the mechanic is telling me on the other end of the
Yeah.
phone? Combined with how do I acquire assets and do a better job? If I remember right, there was only two of us in the office when you started. Or was
Yeah,
there?
well, Kara was at the front desk, and yeah, it was a pretty quiet little office at that time for
Yeah.
sure.
So I've reflected on that from time to time that What went into that decision to hire an asset director? And this is before we have an HR person.
Right.
This is before we have a CFO. This is before we have a VP. This is before we have 150. How many people did we have when you started? Do you remember?
I want to say 40 was like maybe
Okay.
40, I think.
So somewhere around 40 people a few years ago when you started. And um, one of the first things that I tasked you with is like, okay, Davin, your turn to go buy trucks.
Oh yeah.
And you went into it with all kinds of excitement.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was really cool. I mean, I myself had just, never even spent the amount of money that we're spending on new equipment and assets. So that alone was just like, wow, this is an incredible opportunity to spend money in a way that is building careers for other people and myself. So that was, and not only that, we were dealing with a vendor that was out of state. It was all through the phone. So it was super exciting for sure. Yeah.
Fast forward 3.5 years, we have this COVID world hit us. And, strangely enough, our business, w- for every two people basically that we hire, we got to go get an asset,
Yeah.
right? And so as we kind of slowed down during COVID, we made the decision to get rid of some of our assets. And, in hindsight, I don't know, good decisions or bad decisions. We could debate those all day long. And when you're dealing with all the implications of all your decisions, I believe at that time it was the right decision. And
Yeah.
actually, many of the trucks we sold were up for replacement anyway.
Truly, it was actually it was a really it was a good opportunity for us to refresh our fleet. We were behind on our replacements because of our growth, and yeah, really we were able to catch up because of that.
Yeah, we got rid of all those problem vehicles
Yep.
during that time, right?
Hmm.
So, but now you're getting the pressure that, hey, David, we need more trucks. I
Yeah,
don't know how many you've bought this year. Actually, probably hasn't been all that many.
it has been quite a few
Oh,
actually.
really? How
Yeah,
many do you think we've bought this
I
year?
think at least somewhere around 30 or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. Yeah.
I just know the dollar amount, and
Right.
that's freaky enough. And as we look forward to next year in 2022, the phone's been ringing. We have a set of clients who are pretty dang excited about what's happening next year, right?
Yeah,
The price of a barrel of oil has been attractive. Iron ore has been attractive. Industry is moving, and
for
folks are
sure.
happy. We're going to be needing more. So has that excitement level changed for Davin to go buy a new vehicle 3.5 years ago to today? Or are you still maintaining that same excitement?
I would say it's different. It's exciting because instead of this being a new experience, it's a new challenge that we're coming across. We're coming across the I used to be able to go I had basically I had two vendors that I stuck with, whereas now I have a long list of contacts in my phone of different vendors we've used, and that's just because of how hard things are to find. And it might not be so much that they're hard to find, but to get that value that we're looking for is what really is the key, and the real pinch point is you don't want to go buy a $90,000 vehicle to go take the box off of it, to throw muddy boots in the back of it, to get it smashed by a pheasant on the way to a location in North Dakota. You want something that's going to get our guys, the comforts that they need, electric windows, electric locks, and, just the basic things like that. Finding them now is definitely exciting to be able to say, you wanted those three trucks. I got those three trucks. Guess how long it took me to find them? Guess where I found them? And now we have people flying all over the country, driving and making all these new relationships and stuff like that. So it's definitely exciting.
It's just a different type of excitement.
Different, yeah,
Yeah.
different for sure.
Well, what did we do? We sent a few guys out to North Carolina a couple months ago.
Yeah, North Carolina, Arizona. We've sent people to Oklahoma, Kansas. I mean,
Well, and I think my dad went down to, what did he fly into Houston, drove a truck over to our Carlsbad office and flew back to Dallas and drove a different truck or
yeah,
something.
yep,
So
yeah. Flew to the same state twice, two different dealerships, two different trucks. Yeah.
yeah, pretty exciting. So has your opinion of car dealers changed in this transition? Are you finding that folks are still wanting to help you, or is it even hard just to find people who want to help?
Man, it is very dealership to dealership. It's different. You'll find one dealership that, like I've told you before, I've had people hang up on me. I'll say, "Hey, I'm from Wescom and I work for an electrical company. we're doing awesome things all over the Midwest, and they'll be like, nice try, and they'll hang up on me. And I come to find out, dealerships are kind of cutthroat right now because they want inventory. So if they get even the slightest feeling that I'm from a dealership or a fleet management company, they'll just say, get out of here. But then I'll find a vendor like in Kansas, that example, they were so excited to have somebody from out of state call them. They're a small little dealership in the middle of nowhere, and they were just fired up, and the experience was just outstanding. They mailed paperwork, we did DocuSign, and it was just a really smooth transaction.
One of the surprises I ran into, this was before you started, and one of the reasons why we ended up hiring an asset manager was how different every dealership truly is.
Yeah.
And I think back to even one of our first well, it wasn't a first one because were in a different office at the time, but we had needed a particular truck. Well, it wasn't, we're the kind of company, if somebody wants a particular truck, we usually will lean into that and have a conversation, right? And this individual, I can't remember all the details of it, but we finally told him, you go find the truck, we'll pay for it, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're that picky about it. And he found the truck over in Wisconsin, and you closed a deal with this dealership. And right as we were leaving, or these two individuals were leaving to go pick up the truck, I don't know if you recall, but they called and said, like, we weren't authorized. I had to go. The
Yeah.
owner has to
Yeah.
go pick up this truck. And we start this conversation like, dude, I've been sitting in enough dealers' offices over the years. Like, I can't think of a more miserable place to
This
be.
is the most inefficient place to sit.
For me, I just have no fun with it. I don't like spending the money. I hate every part of it. I love when someone else is doing it. I'll gladly support them, right? And so we started this big conversation, and he was just adamant about it, that we weren't getting that truck unless Shane Stolp showed up. And what was it, 4 or 5 hours away?
Yeah, it was at least 4 hours away. Yeah.
And we knew we would go there, and then we'd be sitting there for several hours, and then it'd be 4 hours back, whatever. There was something that happened that finally built the legitimacy behind who Wescom was to convince him who it was.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, we gave them a reference. We said, you know what? We actually have done a lot of business with this dealership in North Dakota. How about you give them a call and just confirm that we are who we say we are, and we do what we say, and do what we say we do, and whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, so once they made that call, yeah, they called you right back and said, Shane Stolt, these trucks will be ready, and come. And the playing field completely changed. They absolutely wanted our business.
And to the point where they were really worried about the fact that we're going to be sending a check with these individuals. And they're like, oh, we don't, they're freaking out about that. And I'm like,
Right.
whoa, wait a second. We buy trucks all the time, all over the country. Why are you guys freaking out? Well, yeah. And then all of a sudden in that call, hey, you got to call this dealer over in North Dakota, which, by the way, they're in Devil's Lake, right? Small little rinky-dink town of North Dakota. And they're the ones who gave us, that we had done business with,
Yeah.
that were able to give this reference to close a deal. And that was it, and it continued to this day. That was probably 3 years ago. That sticks in my mind, that how important business relationships are.
Absolutely.
Not just when we're providing a service to somebody and getting paid, but even those times that we're actually paying somebody, that we have to leave with a strong handshake, because we actually might need them in a wild way down the road.
Yeah, for sure. In that particular dealership, I'm super proud of our relationship there, because that was a dealership that I actually built and grew, and at one point it actually saved my bacon, because we had hired, I think, probably like 6 people on a Friday afternoon, and we needed 3 trucks Monday morning to be ready. And I was able to contact the dealer, the gentleman I work with. His name's Keith. And I called him and I said, Keith, I know I push you and I push you, and here's what I got going on. And he said, you know what, have you guys come swing by. I'll send somebody over to the dealership at 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday. They unlocked the store, gave us the keys, no paperwork was signed. They drove those trucks out to location. Those trucks were working Monday morning, and it was all due to that relationship. And it is a huge part of a growing business.
And that must have been when we started the big contract in Williston that year, I'm
Yep.
assuming.
Yeah.
And literally that's the kind of business that we're in, right? Things can change so rapidly
Yeah.
that these relationships are so critical that they're done. When you talk about this challenge, what other challenges besides just executing on that actual truck are you faced with?
Yeah, so the purchase itself is extremely challenging. There's many documents to go over, and if you mess up on anything, and the most common issue that we run into is the address for the registration. If we mess up on that, it goes on the title that we have an address in who knows where. All the paperwork gets mailed to that address. The DMV doesn't believe anything we say because we're saying that that's incorrect information, and how could a dealership be wrong? So that is a huge hurdle, that, reviewing paperwork. And it's happened where they've made changes after they get the paperwork back, and those are dealerships we don't do business with. But so making sure that the information that they have and are using is super accurate, that is a massive challenge. I would say also the logistics that are involved. If we're buying vehicles, it's because we need people and we need the vehicle. So logistically, if you buy 3 trucks, you actually still need 3 people to go pick those 3 vehicles up. Well, you actually need a fourth person to drive them there. So there's the logistical challenge of coordinating and all that stuff. But luckily, we have a really flexible team that's willing to work late Saturdays, and take extra time to do those deliveries and
Yeah,
pickups.
they're incredible. They'll fly out to North Carolina and
Yeah.
drive a truck back, right? What about you've sat in a lot of meetings with me, and I think we've worked closely enough over the years that there's always I don't want to call it tension, but this thing about people take a lot of pride in their trucks.
Yeah.
Well, there's some that just flat don't, and
Some
then there's
don't.
the ones that do, right? And the ones that they do, I've always felt like we should capitalize on that. And if they're going to take good care of their truck, I want to give them nearly everything they want in that truck.
Yeah.
You've had to sit through some of those conversations. What goes through your mind as we're having those conversations, and has it changed now that you've been with us for 4 years?
Yeah, so at first I was a bit surprised that how much thought was put into buying vehicles, as far as what does that employee want, or what do they need, what will make them be a proud Wescomer. And that is one thing that I feel like is just outstanding at Wescom, is our way of addressing it. Every situation is an individual, as an individual, like an individual situation, is how we address everything. We have policies, we have, our rules and things like that, but we address every situation individually, and through that we end up making some really cool decisions in those meetings about people's vehicles. And in the end result, we have these individuals who are committed to our team. And I guess, so what, to bring it back, at first I was really surprised, like, why would we, put so much thought into this vehicle. Fast forward to now, I see that we have people who've been committed through, like, this COVID. People didn't just jump ship and say, you know what, I'm out of here, this is sketchy, I'm going to go work at, somewhere else, change industries or whatever. We have people who are committed to staying here because we've shown the commitment that if you need something and want something, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and I think this is part of the transition of business that's been kind of a personal challenge, and you and I have talked about this a lot, that you get more people on the team, you get conflicting ideas, and but I always go back to, we'll have base policies and procedures, but production will always trump policy. There will always be room to make a flexible policy enough that the gentlemen who've been with us for 4 or 5 years, and by the way, they're the same ones who are not only just taking good care of their pickup, but they're the ones who usually at last minute, when there's a client need at 7 o'clock on a Saturday, those are the people who are going to take care of it.
Exactly.
And I have been challenged in that, that I take that too far and give too much flexibility to the employees. And, certainly that's a challenge I deal with, but it's helpful to have folks like you on the team who've been through, the years and have seen why we do it that way.
Exactly.
It's not something that we take lightly. When you think about beyond buying the vehicles, there's folks out there. You were a mechanic and working on vehicles, and you had this idea of leadership. And certainly buying the vehicles are challenging. What else in your day beyond the actual vehicle purchasing is keeping you running, or what else are you involved in?
Yeah, so on the day to day of there's maintenance and there's insurance claims and cell phones, and I manage our cellular accounts. I guess the most exciting part is um, getting to work. Like I get to communicate. I have the opportunity to communicate with everybody on the team, all 140, 50, what however many people are here today. um, I have the opportunity to call them and say, how's your day going? How is this asset treating you? How is do you have the devices that will help you get your job done? Whether it's the JSAs and different things like that. So I guess like we talked a little bit about we had a gentleman hit a deer this morning. I called him up and said, hey, how are you doing today? And he's like, well, and through that I got to just touch base with him, and he he's been actually with us for quite a few years now, and it was just I have a really cool opportunity to touch base with a lot of people through my position.
Yeah. So these folks, if they're in an accident or whatever, we have an app they use for everything, and part of it is reporting that. You're on
Hmm.
an automatic email. You pick up the phone, and you and Chris get to catch up.
Yeah.
You actually, David, something that a lot of our folks don't realize on our team, with the growth that we've had, is you actually, at one point, after you had been with us for maybe a year, you and I were kind of talking career strategy,
Yeah.
life, and you approached me and said, "You know what, Shane? I think Caitlin and I want to go out to North Dakota."
Yeah. That was a real I still remember the sun shining in the conference room when we were all sitting around the table and thinking, man, if we just had an asset guy in North Dakota, how this conversation would be a lot easier. We're having some tough challenges with vehicles. And yeah, that spurred that, man, what if I drug my family out to North Dakota? And man, I look back on that, and what a cool opportunity. I got to go live and breathe the oil field for a whole I'm gonna take full credit for a 14-month adventure.
You're not going to say just a
It
year.
was not a year, Shane, it was 14 months. And it was really cool. I got to experience the actual atmosphere in the oil field that I think I really wish a lot of people could experience, because the community around the whole industry is everybody's like brothers in arms. Like we're out there to do the same thing, and Energize America is that. Um, so yeah, getting to go out there, getting my hands on our equipment that's in the field, that was just an awesome opportunity. And I think it really set myself up for success, being the asset manager I am, with a couple folks working underneath me that I get to, when they call me and they say, I'm in the middle of nowhere, what do I do? And I say, I'm going to help you because I know what that's like. I had my truck break down on my way to Newtown, North Dakota, and it's 45 minutes to the nearest anything.
Yeah, and it might be 30 below.
Exactly, yeah. So understanding the urgency of when we have things like that happen is probably one of the key takeaways from living in North Dakota.
Yeah, well, and I just commend you for doing that, because so oftentimes we find that we all have really, really good ideas, but if you're not willing to go put that idea to work, then I have a hard time listening to your idea,
Sure.
right? And I think you've been in some meetings with me where I've commented that we can have a lot of dreamers, folks, but dreamers don't get tons done. So I tend to gravitate towards those who get things done,
Yeah,
right? Like those who put their boots on. And there's nothing like living a day in the
absolutely.
field. But you talked about this brothers in arm thing, and I recently was visiting with somebody about just the industrial world and the blue collar, hardworking folk. And I think that's what drives me about it is there's so much compassion in that group of people.
Absolutely.
Like you screw with one of them, you're screwing with all of them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I actually lived in an apartment complex when I was in North Dakota, and yeah, if somebody was having trouble with their car in the parking lot, boom, there's a crowd of people, and everybody's like, "Hey, what should we do here?" And there might be a guy in the back like, "Hey, does anybody want a water?" Like it was the coolest thing, and you could ask anybody in that group. Well, the question that people always asked in North Dakota was, "Where are you from?" And everybody was from all over the country, Alaska, the East Coast, West Coast. That was probably the coolest part, is we all had this similarity that we were all from somewhere but North Dakota. And that was, I think, what brought us, a lot of people together for the most part, was being not from, the area.
Yeah, the vulnerability that you each had because you
Hmm.
didn't have the preset, well, I'm from North Dakota, so this is how we do it, or I'm
Yeah,
from New Mexico, this is how we do it. I think that's been a really cool part about our company is just the diversity of where our people come
absolutely.
from,
Yeah.
and getting to know each of their stories. So now you find yourself doing a lot of management from the office there, dealing with local mechanics. Whether you're in dealing with Carlsbad, New
Hmm.
Mexico, Williston, Watford, Duluth, all over the place. Well, you've obviously even had to deal with some. We had a lot of guys on the road this year,
Yeah.
so doing pipeline work. How often do you get out to the field?
I've been trying to stick to once a month, and that's been pretty challenging as I step less and less into the daily operations and more of a high level view of our fleet. We have just as many assets as we do employees. So there's a big challenge, even like this year we did budgeting, and that took a lot of time. But I guess I guess it was I don't know, you're
The
gonna
the, the budgeting, you enjoy that piece.
I I don't know why, Shane. I just love the numbers part of it because the numbers tell a story. And because, like I've mentioned many times, I don't have a degree. I don't have tons of experience with finance. So I really rely on data to help make my decisions or to form my opinions. So when I'm able to be involved in that data, I get super excited because I know I'm about to learn something.
Yeah, I know that's a really cool part. And I think when you first started, we talked a lot about that hey, at Wescom, we're gonna let data help drive our
Hmm.
decisions. Like my favorite topic, right? Diesels versus
Oh
non-diesels.
boy.
You like that topic
We're
too,
gonna
don't
shake
you?
the internet.
Yeah. What do I tell what do
we
we say?
we just we can't commit to this diesel idea. We just flat can't. The data just proves time and time again, and we just can't commit to it. It from many standpoints, from the disruption it causes with our employees, our clients, and our finances, and it's just logistically challenging to have diesel equipment
Well, one, you're paying more capex, right? Right out the door.
right out the door.
Every time we're paying more in operating expense. And then to just put some icing on top of an already too thick and sweet cake, you can't find a mechanic to save your life that can work on a diesel.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's been an interesting find of ours.
For sure. Yeah. No, and when you own 100 of something, you really quickly learn what the common problems that we have with our vehicles, and that is a huge part why we stick with just Fords is for myself. Um, I just when you have 100 of something, you get to become an expert at that. And so by having 100 Fords, we're able to say, okay, this problem is pretty common. We know this is going to happen.
The
We can
death wobble, for instance. We've
exactly.
been here, done that,
Yeah.
get it in, get
Yeah.
it
It's
warranted, get it back out on
it's
the
not
road.
even a question.
Yeah.
Whereas these different issues that come up, we'll maybe pick a little bit harder, and we'll be like, okay, we're gonna quote this at several places
Yeah.
because this is a new problem.
The other interesting find when you were talking about budget and just like getting into the numbers and data, how many times have we went down this road where we're trying to figure out a magical formula on auto maintenance costs, right?
Yeah.
Because me, I love maintenance costs. I love
Oh
spending
yeah.
money. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, how can we budget that number right?
Hmm.
And every time we find out it is just simply a function of revenue in our business.
Absolutely. Yep. And I've picked that one apart every year. I'm like, I'm gonna find the recipe and I'm going to send it to Shane and he's gonna be fired up. And every time we just go, it's a function of revenue.
And it literally, we have several 8 years of history now that show
Absolutely.
that our maintenance costs are a flat percentage of revenue, which makes it easier for us
Yeah.
as we plan forward, right? And it kind of gives us a way like, hey, let's try and pull this down. Was it surprising to you, or has it been surprising to you at Wescom, how large of a percentage of revenue really does, or like how much does go into maintenance and repairs?
Yeah. It's pretty frightening. It's a huge number. And especially considering that we have a lot of new equipment. Our oldest piece of equipment, or truck even, is probably not even 3 years old. It's probably right at that 3 year mark. And the commitment we have to doing that is because of our our clients. We want to provide the best value, And our best way to do that is to show up every day.
Yeah.
And circling back to the revenue, I mean, sorry, the maintenance cost, it's amazing how much it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, having the new vehicles, we spend a little bit more on CapEx, but importantly, the people who are spending hours, our team is on the road for hours of their
Absolutely.
life. Down in New Mexico, they might drive 3 hours one way to a location,
Yep.
3 hours back. Over in North Dakota, hour to a location is not unheard of. And by the way, that's after driving to work for the first half hour, right?
Yeah.
So these folks are working long hours, and we owe it to them to give them a decent vehicle to work in. But then, even more importantly, too, that the client is paying us, oftentimes by the hour in our industry, and we have to make sure we have the right tool and
Hmm.
equipment to get them there. You also get involved in some tools, don't you?
Yeah. Yep. The initial setup of the truck, I make sure that the tools are purchased, ordered, and everything's. I ended up creating a sheet to kind of help walk me through the process and help the managers who are involved through that process. Obviously, when you have 30 people, it's easy to say, hey, Dustin, what tools do you want on this truck? And he sends me a text, I want this and that, and then I go get it quoted out. We order it, and he gets it, and we're good. But when you have, several divisions, you've got different, we have environmental, we have solar, electrical, mechanical. This I had to create a spreadsheet to follow up on, making sure I'm getting the right tools and equipment for everybody.
Yeah. So to outfit a vehicle at Wescom, we're spending. Have prices went up on new rigs?
On trucks,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure, we're seeing a huge increase. Partly, what we're seeing is the lack of rebates. At one point we were seeing, up to $10,000 in rebates. At the end of the year,
To the point where we didn't even MSRPs didn't even mean anything.
we never paid MSRP. Never. If somebody was gonna try to make me pay MSRP, I would say, sorry, dude, I'm going somewhere else.
Well, we in fact opened up a very large line of credit with Ford just simply to take advantage of some of those rebates that were out there, right?
Absolutely.
Even though we were historically cash flowing our vehicles, well, let's take advantage of these rebates. And now it's like, well, it don't even make sense to do that possibly. So we're having a lot of conversation about
Right.
best use of cash, right? But what are you seeing? A 20% increase? A truck that used to cost 50 is now
Yeah.
60?
In the last 3 years, I would say, trying my hardest to do apples to apples vehicle. The cost of a vehicle today is $10,000 more than what it was 2 years ago.
So the $50,000 pickup has become a $60,000 deal.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes on these electrical trucks, especially that we use in North Dakota, we're taking the box off, maybe getting $1,000 credit.
Right.
We're putting on a utility box,
$12,000 service body.
$12,000. Those have probably went up
Those went up about $1,500.
because we used to only pay 10 grand for those suckers back in the good old glory days.
Right.
And so, we got this $70,000, $73,000 pickup to start with. You're putting on a set of tools. Those are averaging
9,000.
$9,000 to tool up the
Mhm.
truck. And now we're ready to go to work, right? Have you heard from our employees if we're setting them up right or not for success with that?
Um, yes, and the answer to that is we're setting up awesome, to the point where they're so impressed that they're saying, "Hey, how about we add this to it?" Because they know that that is that's a huge importance to us, that they're getting what they need. And when I started, we had a small list. It is now a full list, and every one of those tools we feel good about because it was from the guys in the field that were saying, "Hey, we should get a 4 foot ladder, but we really need 6 foot as well." And with that, we have these safety rules and things like that. And if it's going to be leaning against a building, it needs to have X, Y, Z. So through that, we've definitely we have a very precise tool list that's through the input of our field guys.
And I'm pretty proud of it because to me, it's not something that was a bunch of guys sitting around in a room
Absolutely
directing. It
not.
came from the field. But yet we didn't just let it. We're not the kind of company that just buys and buys with no
No.
accountability.
No.
What do we do sometimes?
So we do random inspections, and that's been a awesome process because the guys getting in the trucks, they're pumped to do it because they know they're not going to get blamed for the guy who lost the drill last week, who had this truck or whatever. He can get into his truck and say, "Yeah, I signed off on this. This truck came with these tools." And if he has an issue, we can just pull it up and say, "Oh yeah, obviously it came with that." and through the warranty process, through whatever vendor, we can get that tool replaced.
So, and I guess what we're driving towards is we're not, we call them inspections, but they're more like a check-in. Hey, let me see your pickup.
Totally.
Let's do a check, right? Because what we've realized out in the field, you're working on a location at 7 o'clock at night. The snow starts moving and it's whipping, and all of a sudden the client calls and says, "We're calling it a day. You have to
Hmm.
leave location." And so you start packing up, you leave, and it's not unheard of, fellas, to leave a drill behind. We've all done it,
Right.
right? And so we don't want to be the kind of company that doesn't replace that drill, but worse, we don't want to be the kind of company that sends out that truck tomorrow without that drill,
Yeah.
because then we've failed a client.
Yeah.
So we're doing these random check-ins to make sure that we got the tools that we need to do a job right for our clients. And that also has been an interesting relation to revenue on small tools over the years.
Hmm.
It's like some of this stuff is funny that it's all related to how much business you're doing,
Yeah,
which tells you just got a really good team who's following some really good practices.
for sure.
When you mentioned you have a project car, why do you bother working on a project car?
Man, that's I guess I enjoy working with my hands, and being in an office setting. I don't get that as much as I used to as a mechanic. So it's something that I enjoy doing. There is, when you work in an office, it's the downside of working in an office is, you don't get to go out and build a well. You don't get to go build a cool panel that I'm super jealous of our panel shop guys, to turn around and look at it. A lot of the things that I do are, on the cloud. They're on a spreadsheet. So coming home, going home, and working on, my Mustang is something that I look forward to, on the weekends, to go kind of tinker with it and watch it change over the few years.
Yeah, I've found that too, that it's hard when you're, in a bigger environment, you're not day to day. In fact, some people are like, "What are you doing still reviewing all the client invoices?" Well, I say it's because I'm a psychotic CEO, but it might be like I just like moving paper sometimes because that it makes
Yeah.
me feel good.
Right. Yeah.
But what about your time, just overall at Wescom and those folks that are out stuck in their career? Like I don't think you were stuck at any time in your career, but we definitely had conversation about just life and where to go with it. What do you
Yeah.
tell folks when they're asking like, "Hey, David, how'd you get to where you are?" And I don't, not in a way that you're something or you're somewhere, but
Yeah.
those people that are wondering, what does that journey kind of look like?
Yeah. I actually was talking to a friend of mine about that. He's quite a few years younger than I am, and he was getting itchy feet. And one thing that, looking back, that I wish I probably would have done better was stick, find what you enjoy and stick with it, and more specifically, stick with a company. If I would have, you know, my first year at Wescom was extremely stressful. I dove in, I was over my head, and I was pushing myself. Wescom wasn't doing the pushing. I wanted to absorb as much knowledge as I could. And to the brink of where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did, because through that I learned my limits and what I enjoy, and I found what was rewarding, which is to be part of a leadership team and management and data. If I would have left at that point, I wouldn't have found out that the reward of sticking with something, getting good at it, and feeling confident, when you make those phone calls that you want to make a deal, over the phone or whatever.
Well, and because it's important to understand sometimes the circumstances are just simply out of your control.
Yeah,
And so we just have to learn how to deal with those circumstances.
absolutely.
I think even when we first started working together, we spent a lot of time on, "Shane, why is it this way? Why is it that way?" And
Absolutely.
there's only so much time in a day, David, and you just got to roll with me, okay? Just go execute that truck.
Hmm.
And then through time, you come to find out, especially when you were in North Dakota, that, oh, that's why it's this way. We literally
Exactly.
just got told by a client, we better add 3 more people or they're going to find someone else to get that job done. And they're a client of ours that we care deeply about, so we're going to go execute.
Yeah.
You know,
See, and if I would have been like, you know what, I don't get why he's doing it that way. And if I would have just said, you know what, this isn't for me, I wouldn't have learned the why. And that's one of the things that you taught me, was carry that question mark right here and beat people with it. Why are we doing it this way? and then step back and watch, and learn from it.
Yeah, that why you know that we have a I tell a lot of folks on our team that pull the why out, that vendors and folks that are in our office so often, um, they want to sell us something, and there's a good reason for it, and oftentimes there's even a good fit. But if you don't understand the why behind what you're doing,
Hmm.
I can't believe I can't. I don't want to say trust, but I can't lean into your
You can't get on that
idea.
boat.
I can't. I
Yeah.
got to understand the why. And, recently we had a health insurance agent in our office talking about our renewal. And I had told him I want to blow it up this year. I want the whole thing blown up. We got to start over with this thing. And he starts talking about something and he asks another member, one of the guys in the room asked a question and I answered it. And I was feeling frustrated. So I finally got up on the board and I wrote down the way health insurance works, and this agent is sitting at the table and he kind of slinks down in his chair and he says, "Boy, Shane, you ought to do this for a living. You know more about it than I do." And I said, "You know what? That's a problem because, I don't think I know more than you, but the deal is this is our business. This is our money and this is our decision. And it has to be the right one.
Yeah.
And the only way I can get behind the right one is to understand the entire situation." And yeah, I'm sure, you say Wescom didn't put that stress on you, but I do remember the days of being at what we affectionately refer to as a sewer pit before we became a legit business and moved to a real shop and office. But over at the sewer pit, there was many nights that you were there till the wee hours. And that was at a time when I think we doubled that year.
Absolutely. It was insane. It was looking back, like I was given a pretty awesome opportunity to participate in that growth. Because I was seeking, I had actually interviewed at several places that said we're a growing company, and I went and worked for them for 5 months and said, no, you're not a growing company. You're an established place, and you are hoping to replace Bob, who's going to retire next year. So I had to move on from that. I went to Wescom, and it was a growing company. Legitimately, there was positions that didn't exist yet that were being developed, and that was really exciting, and learned a lot from that.
Well, and I hope that's one thing that we can always have, right? I was just having a conversation with somebody on Monday about just careers and leadership, and I was telling them, go rock your position. Just rock it. Learn everything about it. Lean all the way into it, and I bet there's so much opportunity right there.
Yeah.
And if you do that, other things will always open up. And don't for 1 minute think that you're working for the kind of company that you can't come in here and tell me, "I know this is how you do payroll today, but tomorrow this is the way I think we should do it." Because I always want to be a leader of that kind of company
For sure.
that embraces that. And the young guys, or in this situation, a 50-year-old guy who's been in the workforce but has some great ideas, bring those in and
Yeah.
let's do this. And I think that's what I go back to every time when I think where's this passion coming from within Wescom? I think it's that we all understand that's what we're doing together. Sorry, I don't care. That's the way you've always done it.
Absolutely.
You're at Wescom. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out why you do it that way, and we're gonna figure out why we need to do it that way.
Mhm.
Or ultimately, what are we trying to accomplish, and why, and what's the best way to get there? What do you think about our leadership team and the future just of energy? Are we acknowledging where we're headed?
Yeah, I've seen that come up quite a bit in the last probably 6 months, maybe even a little bit longer. That we're headed into expanding. We were when I started, it was oil and gas, and then it became kind of like environmental. That part of our business kind of weaseled in environmental, which is super cool. I really enjoy hearing what Char's got going on that side of things, and her team. And then this solar that's coming up, like, super cool. Like, I'm super interested in seeing where we go with that. I'm on a personal level, I'm super intrigued by electric vehicles. I think that's just phenomenal that, there's all these different companies that are coming out. Rivian, Ford is hoping to have their F series pickup, this year. I believe they're going to be sending them out. So I see us transitioning into these renewable type things, specifically solar, and that's super cool. I'm excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, it's interesting, that we're in the oil and gas business to start, but really we've always been out to energize
Energy,
America,
yeah,
right?
that's truly what it is.
Yeah, and I love the fact that we're still got a significant portion of oil and gas business, and
Absolutely.
those clients mean everything to me. I don't care what happens in the crazy world. We will
Hmm.
always be involved in oil and gas. And as the world transitions into a more renewable future, which is kind of funny in of itself, because that, who says oil and gas isn't renewable? But whatever,
Exactly. Right.
as we move into that space, these folks aren't going to be forgotten about.
Hmm.
And I think we can take the skills that we learned in that and still apply it even in this space.
Yeah.
The fact is at Wescom, we need folks like Davin who understand urgency, accountability, and flexibility, and how that impacts our ability to build a customer for life, and how we can create opportunities for people and empower people, and be an integrity style company. You can't do that, even at a basic level, if you don't have good assets.
Yeah.
And I think, as a society and as a world and as business leaders, we can forget that. It can be easy to start, well, she's the receptionist. Yeah, but she's the best receptionist
Right.
who's answering that phone call from the potential client, right? I don't take lightly to positioning ourselves
Right.
that way at work, because we're all on one team. And I think that's, it kind of goes back to even that oil and gas versus renewable versus all this stuff. Wait a second, we all need energy.
Yeah. If you are forgetting that we need energy, you are going to be very, you're going to be caught with your shorts down, because energy is what, the world leaders, or, a superpowers of the world are who runs our energy. And that's, America is a superpower. And
Yeah.
through that, we have to be on top of our energy, because that's what helps us be there.
And rather than fight against it, embrace that conversation at
Absolutely.
the Thanksgiving table with your peers, or when you're out and about, that wear it with pride, that
Yeah.
yeah, you better believe I'm in the oil and gas business, and you better believe that I also have solar on my house.
Yeah. And living in North Dakota really opened my eyes to what the oil and gas industry truly is. It is this big family. And that was going back to the whole North Dakota, living in North Dakota. The little town of Watford City that I lived in is like forever going to be in my heart, because that community and the amount of money that the oil industry dumped and poured into that state even is just incredible. I mean, you don't see it. I mean, when I lived there, I looked at the newspaper, and at least once a week there was a company that was donating to this organization, this group of, this high school. We love our communities, the energy industry.
We do, and I think it's something that we don't talk about enough,
Right.
right? Like it's a humble industry, so you don't
Sure.
necessarily go off bragging about what you've
Right.
done. But I think, like, even the producer we partnered with down in the Permian Basin a few years ago, Marathon Petroleum and us, we developed an entire park.
Right.
Like, that's the kind of thing that these people are doing. And I don't know if you ever catch, but I still subscribe to the Minot News and the Williston Herald
Oh
and
yeah.
the Watford City paper and the, farmer paper. And those get put in the break room, and it's still the same way.
Hmm.
Even during COVID, it was still the same way.
Oh yeah.
Companies were throwing their thousands out in support of the community that they live in.
It's who we are. We won't change no matter, what our challenges are. We'll have to find ways to do it,
Yeah.
differently.
And I think that the important part for us on our level at Wescom is to not just say that, well, that's really cool that they're doing that,
Hmm.
but also for us to do our part. And that can be kind of a challenge, especially within our culture, kind of just the people that we're kind of associated with. We don't have the kind of culture that you go give openly, and
Right.
and you go participate in some big community event. But when we do, we have found incredible success in it. Not the kind of success that people like to think about, like money. I'm talking about, like, when we were cleaning up I-35 this fall,
Yeah.
the success and the camaraderie of a bunch of folks. You got your accounts payable clerk picking
Right.
up garbage right here, with a journeyman electrician who works up at the mine
Hmm.
right here, that they never get to
Absolutely.
be together. And they're doing a common cause of picking up trash along the interstate, right? Those are cool things that can build a lot of success.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that we don't forget that we can't just sit back on the sidelines and clap about those people that are doing that. We need to put our boots on, we need to put on our gloves, and we need to get out there and do it as well.
Absolutely.
And I think even when you were in North Dakota, you brought up an idea with me one time about the Williston fireworks.
Yeah.
That here, this community, they didn't even have a fireworks show until some doctor in the area decided they needed a fireworks show, and
Hmm. Yeah, and they rounded up a couple of their friends and through conversation, and there's a lot of talking that goes on in the oil and gas industry. Everybody kind of knows everybody in a roundabout way, and that definitely, yeah. There's a banner every year at the Williston Fireworks Show of a huge list of donators, and they have the coolest fireworks show. It's like they have a trailer that looks like a command center for like SWAT team. They got screens and dials and lights, and it's a cool show, and it's all through donations.
yeah, I think that's so incredible, and it kind of tells the story of the industry and the people that are in that industry,
Yeah.
and it's like you said, a forgotten story. Well, David, I just frankly, I can't believe it's almost been 4 years that we've worked together. I
Right.
think it was probably one of the best decisions we ever made to not just fill an asset director role or asset manager role, but somebody who had a real passion, not just for cars, because you know me, I also like money, value, conversation, and just the desire to really, really grow in your career. And I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of folks out there that could glean some really good stuff from you. You were the kind of employee who would feel overwhelmed, and you'd come in my office and you'd sit down. And we had some heart to hearts about that.
For sure.
How do you deal with this pressure? Where is it coming from? How can we do better? Um, we have had a lot of conversation about personal finance.
Yeah.
Um,
I Wescom seriously changed my outlook. I think about this quite often. Previously, before I worked at Wescom, my personal finances were to the extent of, do I need it? Do I want it? And basically, if I needed it, I just bought it. And if I wanted it, I just bought it. So, but coming to Wescom and getting this leadership and finance and this data value is become a huge driving factor in what I do and what I we buy vehicles with the plan that we're going to sell them in 3 years. Why? Because that's where we feel like we're capitalizing the best on our value, and bringing that into my personal life is has made my career even that more exciting, that I can apply so much of it to my personal life and be successful through that. And that's a pretty cool thing that I think that a lot of people would find awesome.
Yeah, but it's important that you mentioned given this opportunity. We will give opportunities, and there I think every company gives opportunities. Some people just fail to grab them. So go grab these opportunities, folks, and
Yeah,
do what David did, and turn your passion into your day job, and then you really do have the energy to go home and work on that muscle car.
exactly.
And I call it a muscle car,
Yep.
the Mustang. And I'm looking forward to getting a ride in it someday. Maybe at the next
Someday.
parade in Two Harbors, you'll
Hopefully.
we'll do that ride. So thanks. It's been a good conversation,
Yeah.
David, and keep up the good work.
Yeah. Thanks, Shane. I appreciate it.
Thank you.